Hello, welcome back again to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we talk to leaders in management, people managing people, and anybody else in that space. I have today, lucky, we've got Dr. Joey Faucette with us. Dr. Joey Faucette is an executive coach, a culture architect, and host of the Work Positive podcast. His best-selling book, Work Positive in a Negative World, the Team Edition, is the manifesto for developing your positive work culture. Dr. Joey has spoken to thousands of people within companies and associations annually for decades. Dr. Joey, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on.
Lance, man, I'm delighted to be here and very honored. Thank you very much for having me on.
Great. Oh, my pleasure too. Right back at you. So, Dr. Joey, I wonder if you could tell our audience, our listening audience, a little bit about your company and your practice and what you bring to your clients.
Yeah, well, as you know, Lance, the pace of change today is turbocharged,
Yeah.
on steroids. How many other metaphors can I string together here, right? It's happening quicker today than ever before, primarily driven by technology, right?
Yeah.
And so, what we do a lot is to help companies and leaders within those companies, particularly in the human capital, human resources space, adapt and overcome that change. And that is to find ways of putting the human back in human resources
Mm,
so that persons actually look forward to Monday as much as they do Friday when they come to
right.
work.
Right. Great. Excellent. Um, One of the things that's happened in our main sort of niche, I'm in the entertainment space a lot and
Hmm.
communications and advertising. Um, there's a number of factors, not only affecting our industry, but I'm sure many others right now. And you mentioned also technology. One of the things we've seen is, children who would normally, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, I'm sure Saturday morning cartoons were a big part of our lives. I
Oh
can
yeah.
remember running downstairs early Saturday morning with my brother, and we'd be about 6:30 or 7 a.m. and a whole bunch of cartoons would start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mom always had to wake us up and we didn't want to get out of bed for school, but we would bounce out of bed on
Yeah,
Saturday morning to go see Creature from the Black Lagoon.
exactly,
Now, that
exactly.
was a
Yeah.
hundred years ago, but
Yeah, no, that's it. But and as media changed, now kids could get 24/7 programming. They just
hmm,
a phone or a tablet or whatever, and they're linked
sure.
into. So that's whole kind of structure and culture around that scheduled programming changed. Now people binge watch
Right.
things and. But
Right.
but what has happened? We went through strikes last year, Hollywood actors strike and writers strike.
Hmm.
AI is talked about a lot, but I think it's going to have more marketing than actual effect long term. I think it's going to produce some
Okay.
sped up tools in productivity.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it doesn't take away the jobs that initially people were forecasting. But anyway, long story short, um, how do people deal with adapting to constant change? I guess is my question for you. If you're my consultant coming into my company or one of my clients' companies, what are some of the frameworks we talk about with you about how to stay adaptable in these constantly changing times?
Yeah, well, I went back to the Great Depression and studied persons I began to call Great Depression gurus who created companies during the Great Depression that still thrive today. My initial research was done during the Great Recession of '07 and '08 and '09 and '10. For some of us, it
Right.
lasted quite some time. And discovered their habits. What is it that they were doing that I could do in my business to bring renewal and vitality to my business, and that then were duplicable skills that others could learn as well and build on top of their strengths. So, in doing that, I discovered that the first, or at least I identified it as the first, and in the work positive framework, has to do with the perceive core practice, and that's the mental dynamic. So
Mm,
what happens is our brains, while we maintain um, neuroplasticity all of our lives until we're, your mother's age and my dad's age and, and all like that. However, we do prefer familiar thoughts,
right.
Lance, and
Yeah.
we enjoy processing information in certain ways. And that's the first thing our brain does. I don't know whether our brains are lazy or super efficient.
Right.
Either way, that
Right.
results the same. When I take in some new information or encounter something new, I'm trying to put it in a file folder, if you will.
Yeah.
I tried to put it in a Dropbox folder or on my OneDrive, right? And if it doesn't fit, then I'm immediately pushing it out and I don't want to deal with it. Well, what happens is that then morphs into, really degrades into fear because you
Mm,
continue to get onslaughted by all this change.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with it. I'm not adapting to it. I'm not working towards it. I'm not seeing it as an opportunity. I'm seeing it as adversity. What happens is it really degrades into fear. And at that
Yeah.
point, about the third time around my amygdala in my brain, the
Yeah.
third lap around my brain that fear runs, I no longer can distinguish between what's really real and what I
Mm,
think is real. And so
mm,
then I become paralyzed, I have mental gridlock. And you mentioned technology, then that dams up what I think is the best, the joie de vivre, if you will, of our work. And that is the human spirit, where innovation and creativity and those kinds of things live.
mm.
And so I'm no longer able to move beyond intention, to act
Right.
on it, to create the reality that I want. And so a
Yeah.
lot of what we do is just, as a positive culture architect, to come in and help persons understand that we want to create a psychologically safe environment in which we can help persons go to the edge of their competence, fail graciously, and
Right.
then learn from it and recover.
Right. 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 I I have to share a because I think it's bang on what you were just talking about. I have been just watching. I binge watched the first season of this show called The Bear.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Disney Plus. Friends have been recommending it for weeks, and I'm like, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. But it's um, a fellow who inherits a family-run restaurant,
Okay.
and for more than a decade, everyone's done things a certain way there. And the fellow who inherits it is like a Michelin star chef from some world famous restaurant, but now he's got this greasy spoon diner. But he's trying to elevate the quality and the processes and everything. And so it was just interesting to watch. I put my HR cap on sometimes to watch a culture shift. But anyways, the show
Sure.
shows you people saying stick to the system, stick to the system. And he's like, no, I want a new system. They're like, no, you're an idiot. Get out. So there's this culture clash of the old guard and the new guard in
There
the
really is.
microcosm of a diner, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's I'm into season two now. I got that far. Um, and I don't know, we could use it as a analogy for some of the work that
Oh,
you
it's a
do and I
great
do, in the sense
analogy.
that
Yeah.
and it's beautiful because uh back to your this thing about three trips around your brain. When you can't see where it should go and you can't see the positive, people respond negatively or in an anger,
Mm,
and
mm-hmm,
then they
mm-hmm.
really dig in and they start fighting the
They
change.
do. I refer to that, Lance, as emotional mutiny.
Yeah.
And sometimes the persons closest to you are committing the emotional mutiny. The
Yeah.
exact things you're talking about. You're crazy for doing that. Why would you do that? It's working the way it is. If it ain't broke,
Yeah.
don't fix it. You know,
Yeah.
you really, the persons that you would expect to support you as you are in a new venture, they're the ones that'll cut your knees off out from under
Yeah.
you the quickest. And so, how does one persevere? How does one maintain an emotional unanimity within oneself at that point with so many conflicted messages? So,
Yeah.
you want to, and I'm talking emotional intelligence here, you want to seek to self differentiate at that point
Yeah.
and just see others observing without participating in their reaction to the rapid pace of change, and
Yeah.
just understand and bless them that they're doing the best they can. Or as
Yeah.
being a good Southerner, you can talk about somebody, you can dog them as long as you say bless her heart or bless his
Bless your
heart.
heart.
So
Yeah. Right.
just bless their hearts. They're doing the
Yeah.
best they can with what they got. We're all trying to figure it out. So you just stay the course, constantly learning, because as Maxwell Maltz said years ago, back in the 60s in psychocybernetics, it's a zigzag course.
Right. Right.
And so I gather new data, I move forward to the next set point. And so failure is an experience instead of a person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I really like to think of failure as learning, because I discovered some ways that this didn't work, which is Edison did with a light bulb, right? Got me
Yeah.
a lot closer to discovering what's really going to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're bang on. It reminded me of a couple things, and if I go back to my school HR schooling days, we talked about team dynamics, building a new team,
Hmm.
and I can't remember exactly who put it together, but they had this thing of storming, forming,
Yeah.
norming, performing,
Forming,
and
norming,
so
storming, performing.
I don't know
Right,
if you
right.
remember that, but
Yeah,
that was the
yeah.
idea, that, and they said if you try to short circuit and jump ahead, you'll
Oh, you
default
screw it up.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
so
the
the
human dynamic.
yeah.
That's just the human dynamic. We go through predictable processes in taking on new information, new relationships, anything that's novel or new. Well, what's happening today, Lance, is just about every morning we wake up, something's new.
Yeah.
So where does the perseverance or grit or resilience, there's so many studies around that done today. Where does that come from within you? And so then self-care becomes supremely important because of the emotional angst that we're going through.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, this was not just from Great Depression gurus. We had a front row seat to this during the COVID pandemic, and I think since then.
Yeah.
However, to be true to what I'm talking about here, Lance, what I'd like to quickly say is I think the opportunities in front of us today to redefine work and what
Mm.
work means and how we work,
Yep.
oh, it's a greenfield, blue
Yeah.
sky kind of
Yeah.
opportunity. I absolutely love it, and I'm delighted to be participating in that transformation today.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I never really liked commuting to start with. So this whole thing that happened with work from home, I thought this is fantastic. I'm working from home. But I
Yeah,
remember right at the beginning of the pandemic, I was dealing with a client on the West Coast, and it was March, whatever year, 2019 or 2020, whatever, whenever the pandemic started.
2020.
It's all a blur to me.
Yep.
But these
Mm.
fellas said, "Hey, our office in China just came back. They were away for 10 weeks, and they said China has fixed the problem. It's all fine." So they said to me, "We're going home for 10 weeks. We'll see
Uh,
you in 10. Let's reschedule the call for 10 weeks from when all
we
this
all
stuff."
thought it was a short term, right?
Yeah. So I
This
thought
will
two
be
and a
over
half
in a
months,
month or two. Yeah.
we'll be fine in 2.5 months. And,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
rest is
Lance,
ancient history.
yeah, they did not lie. They were just wrong. And that's the dynamic. We
Yeah.
wind up being wrong, but we're acting on the information that we know best then. So it's a zigzag course.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
to use a militaristic metaphor, it's like a heat-seeking missile. The target changes constantly.
Yeah.
And so we just follow the target. One of the keys I think is for you and me to ensure that our personal missions align with the company mission, because that's part of what's going to keep us through this dizzying zigzag of change.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's going to help us find the grit, the resilience to overcome and to adapt to whatever change is
Mm.
coming and to overcome. We just got to ensure that there's this sense of belonging for us.
Right.
And that's part of the great redefinition of work, I believe. Um, I understand how my daily task fit into the company mission, and there's value alignment, there's purpose alignment.
Yeah.
We're in alignment there. Not that it's 100%, but
Right.
if you get over 75%, yeah, it's a really good day. So that's how I look forward to Monday as much as I do Friday, because I understand
Yeah.
my contribution's valuable, it's needed by the team and
Yeah.
by the end users, the customers or clients, whoever's using
Yeah.
the widgets or whatever other
Yeah.
product we're
Yeah.
using.
I want to share with you, Dr. Joey. I was in a mindset course years ago, um, and that the coach talked about it's a blessing was one of her catchphrases.
Uh-huh.
And she said, even in your darkest day, she said, dig deep. And she said, I want you to breathe in real deep, real slowly, and do it several times. She said,
Yeah.
count to five, whatever you need to do. But she said, whatever's going on is some kind of lesson, a teachable moment in some way, shape, or
Hmm.
form. And she said, but if you're in panic mode, you miss it. You miss
Yep.
it completely. So
Totally.
she said, imagine that the dark moment or the tough moment or the really bad thing is going to inform something else. So listen, take stock of what's happening, Um, and it was funny because she repeated it many times for the course. We were working together for about 18 months.
Hmm.
And so this thing, it was a blessing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Because,
Uh-huh.
any one of
Uh-huh.
us could get angry or derailed by something every once in a while. And you
Sure.
go down, you spiral and
Mm.
you're not your best self.
Oh,
You can
absolutely. I refer to
lose.
that as chasing Alice down the rabbit hole. I mean, we
Yes.
really do. We go dark and some of us go quickly and lack that emotional governance. But what you're talking about is exactly what I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
observing without participating. If I can observe something is happening without personalizing it and getting
Yeah.
engaged or participating in it, it just works a whole lot better. Now, the breathing releases the oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, things like that in your brain that are going to replace the cortisol, which is
Right.
if you walk from one room into the next and you're like, what did I come in here for? That's your brain telling you, hey, we're not doing so good with the stressors here, buddy. We need to cope a little bit better. So
Yeah.
you want to reduce that cortisol level, and that frees you up really to innovate and create in that moment and to be able to discover it. You remind me of one of my favorite books, actually written before I was born, and that was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. And
Right.
in that book, he says, within every adversity lies the seeds of opportunity.
Right.
So,
Right.
which do you choose to see? Do you focus on the storm that's howling around you, or do you look for the eye, the center, if you will,
Yeah.
where you can really ground yourself and say, okay, what can I learn? What am I learning? What am I being taught here that
Yeah.
will help me zig and zag more accurately in my work and my
Yeah.
life moving forward?
Yeah. It reminded me too when you were talking about that of I was in a many it's a couple decades ago now in a weekend training course, and they were talking
Hmm.
about this mindset. How do you break through your fears, your paradigms, the
Yep,
comfort level, as you know, because we retreat back to
we
the
do.
area that is most comfortable,
Yep, trying to get back
behaviorally.
in the womb.
Yeah, right. That's sort of I just need this to be like comforting around
Uh,
me, and so
right.
in a workplace, it's challenged. But the one that stuck out in my mind dramatically when you were saying that was. Um, there was a husband and wife, and they were in, I can't remember if it was Iraq or Iran or whatever,
Hmm.
but the area they were in at the time, this is decades ago, there was an insurrection going on. And so
Mm.
there were rebels in the streets, the military was fighting some faction, bombs going off. They were in an embassy hiding. And somebody else had radioed them and said, you need to leave because I'm pretty sure they're going to blow up the embassy.
Mm.
And she said, like, they didn't know if they could quantify or qualify that information. Was this a trap? Was this a trick? Are
Yeah,
they just trying to get us out in the
right.
open?
Yeah,
And she said her husband had this idea. He was watching the street, and he said everyone's fighting each other, and most of them are military vehicles, and it's like camouflage on camouflage. And
mm.
he said if we just get in a taxi and drive right through the middle of it,
Nobody will see you.
and that's what they did, and they got
Hmm.
away, and the embassy
Hmm.
did get bombed. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
a couple hours later the embassy got blown up. But she said, like, had we not had his foresight to sort of say we could all be killed, but we could all be killed if we stay, why don't we get in a cab and look just like we're going through the. And he said they just drove through, and no one even paid them a lick of information or attention at
right.
all.
Weren't on
And
their radar at all. And
yeah, I mean,
that's
so
one of the key findings in the perceived core practice that I continue to coach and help companies design culture around is you see what you look for.
right.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at that
Yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
and most of us are so myopic that we continue, to your point, to stay in that comfort zone and just see the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
regardless of what's going on around us. And
Yeah.
so the ability for that couple to pass through made perfect sense because they weren't wearing camo and
Yeah.
they weren't any perceived threat.
Threat. Exactly.
Since you
Yeah.
see what you look for, that means, Lance, that you can train your brain. Your subconscious, it's almost like muscle memory. Your subconscious can take on about 40 million bits of information per second. 40 million bits, that's your subconscious. And it acts
Wow.
like a filter. And so it's passing things to your conscious brain, right? Which can process about 40 bits per second. So, how you train your brain to establish a subconscious that allows to pass through those things that are priorities to you, those things that are important to you, and to disregard the others is really important. Now, it's not concretized. It's very dynamic, it's
Yeah.
fluid, and you continuously look, except for around things like core values, your priorities, and then what's your unique contribution to make to that work culture or any other culture for that matter, but
Yeah.
specific to our conversation, the work culture. So you train your brain to see what you look for. So if you're looking for the storm, the adversity, the war, that's what you'll see. And you'll
Yeah.
become
Yeah.
paralyzed at that point, never able to
Yeah.
act on your intention. The
Yeah.
adversity is one. However, if you're looking for the opportunity, then you can discover that sometimes hidden within, oftentimes hidden within the adversity, sometimes seed like. So it's don't look for it full grown. and then you can pursue that to cultivate that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. I want to pivot for a second on this
Uh-huh.
conversation, but it's related in the sense that a lot of my former colleagues in the business and our niche in entertainment have been displaced for a chunk of time
Mm,
because of all the changes in the environment and
sure.
their business. But a lot of them now, I think, are expecting that the jobs will return, and I
Mm,
don't think they're wrong. I just think the schedule that they return on might be more protracted.
mm,
And so to me, and I've talked to a few people about this, it almost feels like they wanted to return to what it was, which was normal and
sure.
profitable and busy.
Sure.
They're still in a bit of shock that the industry's been slow for over a year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and a lot of them got quite comfortable, to what we're talking about. This is who I am. This is my identity mixed with work and personal, and here's who I
Sure.
am. This is what I
Yeah.
deliver.
Self-identity is right, wrapped up in work.
Yeah, but I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
like they might need to do a hard reset for a chunk of time until the business does pick up again.
Mm,
And getting past their connection to their identity in their workplace is challenging for a lot of people. Um, in any industry, really. Like, I
mm-hmm.
always talk about, I remember going to a osteopath who'd been a professional rugby player for about most of his years.
Mm,
And then had like 4 or 5 concussions over several years, and the doctor said, "You're out."
mm.
And I remember him telling me, like, the worst thing was, he said, "My identity is I'm a rugby player.
Yes.
I compete internationally at a highest level. This is
Mm,
me." And he said
mm-hmm.
he basically channeled all his energy into that until about the age of 30, when he got his bell rung too many times. And but he said, like, there was a death for him of the identity. He had to go
Mm-hmm.
through a grieving cycle and get over it, and then like rebirth, basically. How do I
Yeah.
build a new identity for myself? And
Mm,
so I'm curious, you've dealt with a lot of different people. I'm curious if you've got any pointers for getting past that paradigm, or getting past that comfort zone,
mm-hmm.
and getting to stretch themselves into, with the skills and the experience that I have, how can I repurpose this for something else right now? Maybe it's for 6 months, maybe it opens a door to a whole new chapter for them, right? I like to look at the
Yeah.
positive, that it might have been a happy accident in some way that leads them to something they
Mm-hmm.
can't even see right now. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh man, it makes 110%. In fact, I'm very fond of saying you are more than what you do.
Right, right.
You are more than what you do. And
Yeah.
if I can just offer a gender distinction for a second, we men are particularly good at identifying ourselves by what we do.
Mm,
And so there's a vocation that I identify myself with. So,
right,
what's one of the first questions we men ask each other? Well, and women too. What do you do?
right, right. I'm
How
an
do you begin to
engineer.
define that? Do you
Yeah,
define that by a work activity, who writes your check, or do you define that by your relationships, right? Or who you are, or what you prefer about life? I mean, if you ask me, hey, Dr. Joey, who are you? We don't ask who are you. What do you do? And I'm like, I'm a pops. That's my
right.
preferred pronoun. I've got the most brilliant, beautiful granddaughter ever born. She's 4 years old now. I love spending
Yeah,
time with her. She helps me grow beyond the places where I'm getting entrenched, brings me awe and wonder in the world.
yeah,
But that's not the answer we expect. Oh, he's just,
right.
just like the intro. He's an executive coach, a best-selling author, positive culture architect. These kinds of things. Instead of that, what if I said, "Hey, I help companies grow a culture where people look forward to coming to work on Monday like they do Friday."
Right,
All right.
right.
That's not about me and what I do necessarily, but what I help companies
Yeah,
achieve. So just seeing yourself beyond what you do into really who you are. This is that redefinition of work that I was referencing
yeah,
earlier,
yeah,
Lance. It's the opportunity to see yourself in new and exciting ways. Now, Dr. Joy, I've been with that work 15 months, I don't have any income and things like that. Well, that's because you're continuing to focus. You're myopic on the way it's always been. I get confused between Will Rogers and Mark Twain. So somebody Google this and check me on this. But one of them said, Things aren't the way they used to be, and probably never were.
Probably never were. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tend to glorify my accomplishments from the past in the way that I did when actually I was just riding the wave in my industry or in my
Yeah.
company or that particular time. It's when adversity comes that we get to dig deep, look inside to see who am I?
Right.
What am I here for? What's my unique contribution? And at that point, how can I marry that with demonstrated needs, desires, wishes that potential customers and clients will have?
Mm-hmm.
And then I begin to address those, and that gives me a service mentality as
Yeah.
opposed to what's in it for me, the Whiffam question. It's what's in it for you and me, and how can
Yeah.
we collaborate? I think that's
Yeah.
just a much more positive model. Is it challenging? Yes. Is
Yeah.
there grief involved? Of course, because here's the way I was. Here's what I enjoyed about my life. Things were easier then, at least
Yeah.
I always think they are.
Yeah.
But in fact, I had to get to that point at some point in my life. I
Mm.
made choices that got me to that point. So it is a rebirth. It's a chrysalis experience again, in
Yeah.
which I'm reinventing myself, and perhaps that's cliche, but I'm actually redefining work beyond just what do you do?
Right.
It's an expression of who I am.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic because that's I think exactly the challenge with, again, I go back to this rugby player. He just
Yeah.
said he when he got over himself and over all the stuff, he said,
Yes.
I decided to pour back my passion with becoming the best osteopath I could be.
Absolutely.
So
Which
he
is
said, that was the goal is I'm going to study it
right.
better than everyone else. I'm going to be number one again, but in a different and he said what he learned was not to think this is for the rest of my life. He said, I'm going to do this for 5 to 6 years and see where I'm at that point, and then
For a
see if I have to
season.
pivot out of that. Right, right,
Exactly, for a season. We live so much longer now.
right.
I've got to live to be, I think it's 129 just to get everything on my to-do list now
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
So, but what is this season? What is this season
yeah,
of life? We were talking before we started recording. I'm medical POA for my parents, both of whom have cancer, and so I'm just going after that with no regrets.
yeah,
Is it challenging? Yeah, because it's much more fun to be pops, right?
yeah,
But just to be with them and no regrets. And my mom's like, I don't know what we'd do without you, those kinds of things. And I'm
yeah.
like, hey, when I couldn't care for myself, you were wiping my butt
Right,
and
right,
you were
right. Yeah,
taking me places. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to repay the debt. And
yeah,
that's the good of humanity that I think we can see during these times of transition. It's just a season. There is a finish line, and something new will occur,
yeah.
presenting its own set of challenges. But the same resilience, the same grit, the same longing and searching for the seeds of opportunity in the midst of that adversity will carry you right on through that next season too.
Perfect. Excellent. Excellent. Good notes. I'm just conscious of time. I'd like to. That was a great final comment, if I could steal that. But Dr. Joey, how
Thank
do
you.
people find you? I know you're on LinkedIn, Dr. Joey Faucette. Any other
Yeah,
places specifically they can hunt you down if they want to work with you or consult and pick your brain on some challenges at their
sure.
culture?
LinkedIn is a great way, Lance. Like you said, it's just Dr. Joey Fawcett right there. I think I'm the only one. At least my mom said I was. So,
Right, right,
but you can go to workpositive.today, workpositive.today, and you can find a free resource there, mini course that I'll give you, something to talk about. Because the way we talk about work really sets our mental framework, our
yeah,
relationships, our emotional engagement, those kinds of things. So really helping you transform the way that you talk about work and begin to view work. So that's a free mini course. And then the Work Positive newsletter is out every week. It features my blog, also features the Work Positive podcast. Like you, I get to interview amazing people, all of whom I'm better for knowing. And I just like sharing stories with the Work Positive Nation. So
yeah.
that's a great
Excellent.
way to find me. And that's
Perfect. Well,
wherever fine podcasts like Talent Thrives Here are heard.
excellent. Thank you, Dr. Joey. I look forward to hopefully maybe yeah, I think we opened up a lot more rabbit holes we can talk about. So,
Yeah,
potentially if there's a chapter two in our works if you're up for it.
I'll be very honored to hear from you then, Lance. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
buddy.
Yeah, nice to chat with you.